Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Dawn Busters Taste Challenge. I have two Canadian blended whiskeys with natural flavors. No age statement. 40% alcohol and bottled in Kentucky by Buffalo Trace, part of the Sazerac Company, and produced, I would assume, in Montreal, Canada at Sazerac, Canada. They're a Canadian distillery. Okay, this is Winn-Dixie Liquors premium Canadian whiskey, of course, premium, you know, the best. Exclusive, true story, because it's only sold at Winn-Dixie stores, which is now a subsidiary of Aldi, who completed their purchase of Winn-Dixie in May of 2024. So we're all wondering what's going to happen with the famous Winn-Dixie grocery chain stretching from Louisiana to Florida along the Gulf Coast. Okay, with over 500 stores. Okay, most of which are in Florida. I think over 400 are in Florida, headquartered in Jacksonville, Mississippi. Canadian whiskey with natural flavors, no age statement. Only sold in these big handle bottles. Now, if you go to Albertsons and get their Sazerac produced Canadian whiskey, Canadian Crest, it'll be in the handles like this, but also in the glass 750s. Those usually run $5.99, $6.99, let's say, and $14.99. This one here is $13.99 this month at Winn-Dixie, and I put the link below. Throughout June, it's going for $13.99. It says bottled by Wide World Imports. But Wide World Importers is a alias name, or as some people call it, I think legally that's a word, a fictitious name for the Sazerac Company, although the U.S. government prefers the term an assumed name. And I think Buffalo Trace has about 75 assumed names. Okay. Now, this is James Foxe. This is a glass bottle, but you can get it in the handles also, of course. So this is James Foxe. This is a 750 milliliters. James Foxe Canadian blended whiskey with natural flavors, also bottled in Kentucky. And it says on this bottle, it doesn't use an assumed name on this bottle for some reason. It says by the Sazerac Company. They never really changed the label since 1975. Oh, no, they say the James Foxe Company. Oh, sorry, I thought it said the Sazerac Company. It's got a fox on it. But it's not a character. James Foxe was a real Canadian official back in the 1800s. I know nothing about him. I couldn't find out anything about him. So it's got like a off-white, white, gold, orange, and oxblood. Very interesting color scheme. Seems appropriate to 1975. Those kind of was color schemes back then, which I like. We love to hear from our customers, Sazerac.com. Yes, all right. Well, they're putting it up there. So, introduced by the Seagram's Company in 1975. And the only difference with the bottles is it used to say down here, bottled exclusively by the Seagram's, and they had Seagram's real big company in that. But they sold it to Sazerac in 1989, I think, along with 16 other brands. They unloaded a lot of stuff to Sazerac in 89. What reason? I think they were the younger people that took over Seagram's. It was not owned by the Seagram's family anyway. They had sold out in 1920s, I believe 1926, to Russian immigrants to the United States. You say the Russians, yeah, a family, and I think they were from Lithuania, but that was part of the Russian Empire then, and then the Soviet Union. But they left there. And they kept it until 2001. 2000, they started selling it, and really, technically, it went out of business in 2001. But what happened was the younger people that owned the company apparently thought that liquor was a slow growth industry. They didn't really want to stay with it. So they were like saying to the older people, let's get out of this and move into telecommunications and like entertainment industry, like movies, this new entertainment stuff that's coming. And so they were like, all right, whatever you want to do. And so that's why you see Seagram's under different ownership, because they just sold all their distilleries and all their brands and all their recipes to whoever wanted to buy it at auction. And they took that money and invested it in mainly Vivendi, a French multinational, big time, you know what I'm saying, multimedia company, which I got no interest in. Okay, anyway, so that's the story. Another brand that was much more, this is a low probably volume Canadian whiskey. I don't think Sazerac ever advertised for it. They just kind of stick it on the shelf, and some people buy it. And I guess it didn't really go over that great with Seagram's, so they just unloaded it. Another one that they sold to Sazerac, though, is Crown Rust. That was a pretty prominent vodka, which you still see everywhere today. But probably the biggest thing they bought, although at the time I'm sure no one thought so, was called Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball Canadian whiskey liqueur. Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball. You say, I heard of Fireball. That's really popular with the dragon on it. Yeah, it's one of the top selling whiskey brands in the United States. It's not technically a whiskey. It's made with Canadian whiskey, but it's a whiskey liqueur, but most everybody considers it a hot, they add cinnamon to it. Okay, let's make it simple. They take Canadian whiskey and add cinnamon. And ding-a-ling, there you go. But it's very popular. But Sazerac, and those would be a collector's item if you found an unopened bottle of 1980s Dr. McGillicuddy's. They still make Dr. McGillicuddy's line, like creme de menthe and other kind of stuff. But they just detached it from that and rebranded it with a new label. And I guess Sazerac figured they weren't marketing it correctly. They might have tweaked the recipe, they may not have changed it at all. But it went from being obscure, to say the least, to now wildly popular. And a lot of people got horror stories about Fireball. No, not that Fireball's bad, but them not consuming it correctly, waking up very sick and everything. But I mean, that's any liquor if you're unwise and foolish with it, But so yeah, there you go. All right. They both say with natural flavors added, which is nothing remarkable because Canadian whiskey very commonly has flavoring added, but they usually don't say it on the label because they're not required to say it. Crown Royal could have flavoring added, but they don't say it. And I think if you wrote them an email, they probably would dodge the question. If they just said point blank, no, we don't have flavoring, then you'd have a straight answer. Boom, they don't have flavoring. Fine. I've never taken the time to write to them on that. But if you wrote an email to any Canadian company and asked them that question directly and they started dodging it and would not give you a straight answer, then you know the answer. See, then you know the answer. They're adding it because there would be no reason to try to tiptoe around it or sidestep it, you see. So, but Sazerac doesn't really care about playing that game, so they just put it right on the bottle. If they add flavoring, they'll just say it on the bottle. And if they add caramel color, they just put it on the bottle. With natural flavors and caramel color, they just put it. They don't care, They're very straightforward. When I call them on the phone, and I've called them like 3 times, they'll just tell you point blank, straight up, here's what we do. Obviously, if it's a secret recipe, they're not going to tell you the recipe, but they'll just tell you the general things. They don't try to hide. All right, Burley says, you, same to you, Burley, Tommy, Carol. Cheers, Louisiana beer reviews. I know your. You mean Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. You are, not your. I know you are anti-war, but I want to thank the men, the greatest generation for the sacrifice on this day. Yeah, I'm anti-war. I'm not anti-soldier. I know you mentioned Goose Island products last night. Availability, I don't think Conker's Ale is even available anymore. Maybe at the brewery. You mean Honker's Ale? Yeah, correction, Honker's Ale. Some people do take that the wrong way. Like I'm anti-war, meaning I would like to see the soldiers not get killed. And they'll interpret that as I'm anti-soldier. Well, if I'm trying to keep her from getting killed, right? If I'm trying to keep you from getting killed, I'm obviously pro you. Now, somebody else is all hoorah, putting a Facebook post about you sacrificing and dying. Well, they don't seem too concerned about you getting killed. They're just all about you died on this beach so that I could go to the beach in Florida. Well, you know, we could talk about that all morning. But that's not germane to this video. But yeah, I never had anything against the soldiers. I mean, of course, if a certain soldier committed an atrocity, yeah, I would have something against that person, but I don't do blanket accusations, you know. So when it comes to things like the 80th anniversary of D-Day, yeah, I'm going to have a different approach. I'm not usually going to do the establishment approach, do an anti-establishment approach. Anti-war doesn't win you too many friends, I've noticed. And people will call you all kind of terrible names, but either they don't have the intelligence to discuss topics, well, that's probably the reason. There's really no other option, because an intelligent person would discuss the topic and could look at things both ways. If you're intelligent, you can look at things both ways. You see, you can examine a topic in an abstract manner is what I'm saying. If you can't do that, then that could be a sign that you lack intelligence. Like you can only see things in a linear manner. You can only look at things linearly. And then you get very confused by people raising questions, and you can't tolerate a question. You know, it's like a question, you know, but you can't tolerate it. All right. Now these things, I think we've covered this pretty well. They're both about the same shade. Now they told me at Buffalo Trace that every product they make has its own unique recipe. All right. I'm going to assume they're telling me the truth. But now, that doesn't mean that each recipe is much different from the other one. You see, they might be the slightest little tweak, so that technically it's different, you know, just technically different, but in reality, you know, in a practical sense, not different. All right. So I didn't argue with them. I said, oh, okay. So fine. We're going to assume that they're telling me the truth and that they're all unique recipes. But remember, very, very similar. And that's why you'll notice that Buffalo Trace bourbon whiskeys, they're just so common one to another. Especially when they only have two mash bills. Like literally, they only have two mash bills, which is the same ratio of grains, but related to the other, or relative to the other. They got the high rye, the low rye. High rye meaning higher rye than average, low rye, relatively low rye. So they take those two mash bills and make all their bourbon out of that. You say, well, then they're all the same. Well, they're not all the same, you see, because that's how the recipe could change. Somewhat higher ABV, somewhat lower ABV, age 3 years, age 2 years, age 4 years, no age statement, age this, age that, age, you see what I'm saying? So what really changes is the aging and the ABV. And there's so many different possibilities there that you could take two things and turn it into 200 things. And that's probably what's happened with these Canadian whiskeys. Maybe this one's age 3 years, and this one's aged 4 years. See, same ABV. Morning, will there be Thundering Thursday or Fandango Friday this week, says Joe Hill. Oh, you have a good day too, Tommy. Fandango Friday is the plan tomorrow at 5:30 Central Time, 4:30 Mountain, 6:30 Eastern. You get it? Okay, I'm ready to roll on this. Yeah, just grain, typical corn, maybe rye, probably rye, a little wheat, perhaps, barley malt, malted barley, single malt like they call it in Scotland. So Canadian whiskey is similar to bourbon in that it's usually mostly corn. Well, bourbon has to be mostly corn, you see, but it's just typical Canadian whiskey, mostly corn, distillate. Now they have different types of Canadian whiskey. Let's not be limiting our thinking. You know, they have 100% rye whiskey from Canada, 100% rye. But I'm talking about the regular blended Canadian whiskey. But the main difference is that bourbon has to be aged in charred oak barrels, new barrels, never before used. Whereas most Canadian whiskey, by tradition, not the law, are aged in used barrels, typically used bourbon barrels. Certainly not the law. They can age Canadian whiskey in new charred oak barrels, like they did with the Crown Royal bourbon mash. They never claimed it was a bourbon. Couldn't have been a bourbon. It was made in Canada. They just made it like a bourbon and sold it as bourbon mash. And the bourbon companies went crazy because they're already under threat from Crown Royal being the most popular whiskey in the United States, and it's not even made here. And so the U.S. government put the hammer down on them, even though they initially said they could sell it under that name. And then they had to change the name to Blender's Mash, and then it just fizzed out, and they didn't promote it, and they canceled it this year or late last year. I mean, it was a bourbon, but not a bourbon in a technical sense, meaning that the one technical reason was it was made in Canada. All right. They make cognac in Ukraine, but they can't call it cognac. They call it brandy, even though the company is called Shustov Cognac Distillery. France cannot control the law of Ukraine. But the French probably don't like them calling it Shustov Cognac Distillery. But when they sell it around the world, they just call it brandy. Okay, enough technical talk, but that's the most interesting part of it, you know. Yeah, same thing here. So appearance, gold, same. Aroma, grain, same. Corn, a little rye, little wheat, maybe some barley malt. Okay. I can't pick up the natural flavors and the aroma. Just can't. Let's go with the taste. Okay. Yep. Sugar water, but I get that with bourbon. I get that with straight bourbon. If I drink straight bourbon, I'm picking up sugar water. No, I mean, but now I'm getting vanilla here, vanilla, or at least what tastes like vanilla extract. Could be some nut oil. I don't know what it is. I was reading the regulations from Canada 2 days ago, and all they said on their current regulations adopted in May of this year, it just said flavoring can be added. It didn't even say natural flavor. They keep shortening the regulations. Pretty soon it's going to be one phrase, won't even be a sentence. But all they say is natural flavors. I mean flavors. How you like that? But these say natural flavors, so we know it comes from a natural source, like a bark, an extract, a leaf, an oil, essential oil. What they call it on the U.S. government website, oleo resin. You say oleo, isn't that margarine? Margarine, yeah. Like so. You say just because something's natural doesn't make it safe. That's right. Arsenic is natural. Wouldn't want to drink it. And just because it's artificial flavoring doesn't make it unsafe. I've read many articles about that. but people think it is. People think that matters. So they, of course, they market it that way. They think organic means safer. Yeah, well, as long as you think that, that's good, I guess. Which would you recommend, Old Grandad 114 or Elijah Craig small batch? Oh, I wouldn't recommend either one because they're too strong for me. I can't recommend stuff like that because it's too high proof. I would recommend Old Grandad. This is me talking. I would recommend Old Grandad 80 proof. I prefer 80 proof whiskeys. Now, some people will say, well, because you're not a real man. A real whiskey lover would like high proof. It's like saying that if you like tennis more than football, you're not a real man. You know, you would have to have a child's mentality to believe that. But we know many people that have a child's mentality, even though they're 40, 50 years old. This tastes fine. I mean, if you're into bourbon, and I am, I guess you could say got enough. It might seem bizarre, and I guess in some ways it is. If you're into Canadian whiskey, you might like it. I don't know. I don't dislike it. I'm not in love with it now. I'm not going to sit here and claim this is amazing. You got to buy it. It's unreal. I can't believe I got it for $13.99 for this huge bottle. Well, I can believe it because that's what I paid. And secondly, it, yeah, you know, it kind of tastes like it's inexpensive because that's what it is. Okay. Oh, you never had Old Grandad? I'd get it. I prefer the 80 proof as well, and I never had either of those. So thanks for the heads up. I mean, you might like it. I tasted Old Grandad 114. Did it have a good flavor? Sure did. But it was awfully strong, and it was just not pleasant to me. And somebody told me, well, you could just add water and bring it down to 80 proof. Yeah, but why would I pay? Then that doesn't make sense. Well, why would I pay $27 for 114 proof when I could buy the 80 proof at $18 and not have to water it down? You see, there's no sense to that. This is what people always tell me. Well, you could just take a high proof barrel proof whiskey and put water in it and it'll bring it down. But then I'm paying for, so what am I paying for? So to tell people I have it? All right. Okay. This one here tastes like it's got less flavoring. In fact, it just tastes like they added a very minimal amount. It's not so much vanilla. It's not so much nut oil. It's more like corn distillate. And the rye, it seems like it has a higher rye. So flavored, yeah, but maybe just a little bit. Whereas the WD, they went full force on the flavoring, probably to mask the fact, you know, you might taste some really inferior whiskey on that. Because that's how they keep the price down. You know, they're not taking the best of their stocks and putting it in that. They're taking probably the worst of their 3-year aged whiskey and putting it in that bottle. And you can't imagine, I can't believe there would be more than 3-year age because this is 2024 and they still selling it for $13.99 a handle. And that ain't happening too much around this world. So are most small batch products all higher proof? No, actually, they're not all. I mean, that's typically the case, but it's certainly not always the case. Like the 12-year age small batch Canadian Club. It's only 40% alcohol, 80 proof. It's just aged 12 years and they don't make a whole lot of it. That's why it's a small batch. Yeah, so that's a good example right there. Some of those small batch Johnny Walkers Scotch whiskey still be 80 proof, but they might be aged 12, 15, 20 years, as opposed to Johnny Walker Red Label was only aged 3 years. And it says it on the bottle. Some people will say Johnny Walker Red Label doesn't have an age statement. Yes, it does, but it's so tiny, I can see why people would overlook it. It's like they're trying to hope you don't see that. It's like in micro compressed print right near the UPC, and it'll say this whiskey is at least 3 years old. I think the winner is the James Foxe. You're not going to find it for $13.99 a handle. But I did find this 750 milliliter bottle. Now, this is not a lie. For $4.17. I'm not making it up. I bought it at Elio's Wine Warehouse. They had a special that month. This about 2 years ago. James Foxe, $4.17. No, you know what it was? It was $4.99. Let me retract. I'll correct myself. It was $4.99 for the bottle, which is still ridiculously cheap. But the deal was you could get it for $4.17 a bottle if you bought a case, which is 12 bottles. So the 12 bottles was $50 even. So if you bought a whole case, you could get a case of Canadian whiskey for $50, 12 bottles. And my friend David was like, let's buy it and split it. 25 a piece, $6 each. I mean, 6 bottles each. 6 bottles each. And 3 times 8 is 24. So there you go. I said, well, well, you don't even like Canadian whiskey. I told him that, but you don't like Canadian whiskey, so why would you want to buy that deal? Yeah, he said, yeah, you're right. So he didn't. Now, if it had been straight bourbon, he'd have been on that. He'd have probably grabbed my wallet out of my pocket and made me buy it, as a thief. But I mean, he wouldn't have had to force me. I would have done it, But so normal price for James Foxe is definitely not $4.99. I guess if you went to a store and they had this bottle, it'd be like $12.99. Talking about for this, you might find it for $10.99. You might find it for $10.99. All right, but I think it has a little bit better flavor, a little bit more authentic Canadian whiskey flavor. Got it. So what do we know about Canadian? WD Canadian, and they don't even spell it right on their website. The website, they got it Whiskey. They're spelling it the USA version, and it's from Canada, but they ain't worried about it. But anyway, it's an all right flavor, assuming that you like, like sweets, like if you like Werther's Original and like pecan candy, like if you like pralines, or some people up north, I think they call them pralines. If you like what I'm saying, if you like caramel, chocolate, nutty type candy, or confections type of things, you probably like it. If you don't like that, if you don't like sweets, I wouldn't buy it, because you just might pull your hair out and say, what in the deuce is this? What is this stuff? But they've been selling it. I know they've been selling it since I was like 5, 6 years old, because I used to see it. I didn't examine it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't go into detail when I was 5 years old, like, oh, what are all the different WD brands that people have at this birthday party? No, they would have it on the table. You see what I'm saying? WD gin, WD vodka, WD bourbon, WD scotch. They have a WD scotch. Can you believe it? WD, this Canadian. Tequila. They even have tequila. Oh my goodness. So and rum. Don't let me forget the rum. It would just be there. Like, you wouldn't pay any mind to it. Like, you would know it's there, you see it, but you wouldn't care about it because it's just a common product around here. So has it changed? Oh, I don't know. No one cares if it's changed. You know what I mean? If it changed in 50 years, no one cares, because it's like cheap. Okay. So and you actually get it cheaper at Walmart. Like literally, you can get it cheaper at Walmart. You say, well, $13.99 for a handle is crazy. That's so low. I know, but you can go to Walmart and get almost the same product caliber. I'm not claiming it's the same. I say almost the same, and it'd be $12.99. Oh, I think $12.88. $1.11 cheaper. Is it any better? No, I'm afraid not. But it's not worse. It's just kind of even. All right, so there we go. People are watching saying, how long are you going to be slumming it? Slumming it. Well, hopefully not forever, because, you know, after all, I do have a lot of other higher grade products. I really do. But I just run across these super cheaps, and it's so inexpensive. It's like, man, it's so cheap. Why not buy it? You know, what the heck? And people are interested in it. They're like, yeah, I do like these kind of products because they're so strange, you know. When you're a stranger. Wayne says, cheers. Yaya says, good morning, Jay. Have a great day. You too. Wayne says, up here in the north, we call them pralines. Haha. Yeah, pralines. Thankfully, WD-40 has been left out of the aforementioned list. Yes, WD-40. That's a great product, though, man. I had to change some stuff in the plumbing here, and I could not get it to move. And you know, you got to be careful, because then you're really going to have problems if you bust the pipe. So I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I took WD-40 and I sprayed it all in there, all on the threads. I let it sit there for like overnight. And then I clamped down on it and I just tapped it with the hammer. Ting, 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 ting. Boy, it moved. It came undone. That stuff's something. But I won't bring it in this channel. All right. Thanks for watching. And y'all have a nice day. Tomorrow I plan to do another one. And it should be the Canadian Hunter. Thank you, David. He got an even cheaper price. You won't believe the price he got for Canadian Hunter. He doesn't even like Canadian whiskey. He gave me, first he was going to give me all of it. Then he said, well, take 4 bottles, little 100 milliliter bottles. That's cool. You know, I've done enough Canadian Hunter to last my life, I think. But I'm going to bring it in tomorrow, Friday's Taste Challenge. All right, y'all take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching this. It's close. I'm not going to say it's not close, but the main difference, this one seems to have less flavor and more whiskey flavor, like straight. Not straight whiskey by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what I'm saying? Straight whiskey flavor, you know, authentic whiskey flavor, how you say that. All right, bye.